Hi, my name is Gats, or the Fairy Librarian, and welcome to a new reading vlog. I wasn't planning on vlogging, actually, but I'm reading a book that is just very interesting and I wanted to talk about it, so here we are. The book is All Under Heaven, the Tianxia System for a Possible World Order by Zhao Tingyang, which is a non-fiction book about Chinese philosophy. So there will be some Chinese terms in this vlog. I pronounce them to the best of my abilities. Okay, but I have some phonetic deafness to certain phonological features that Chinese languages have, so sorry if I mispronounce things. I try my best. But I have at this point read the introduction, and it's already very interesting. So essentially, this book is taking the system of Tianxia, which is a very old sort of political ideal in China. It says like Western politics are sort of based on the idea of the Greek polis. Chinese politics are sort of based around the idea of Tianxia. So this very old structure of society, of politics, and it sort of looks at how could we use this system, how could we implement the system like in a practical way in our modern times, and how could we use the system to sort of deal with challenges of our globalized world where we have global issues because our current political system is not capable of dealing with those properly. And it's sort of, the introduction is sort of explaining some terms and stating some of the questions and just a general overview of what exactly is Tianxia. So it translates, well, it literally translates as all under heaven, and it is sort of this extra level to politics that's like sort of a world governance. So we have like the nation state as our highest political level, and then international politics is basically just different nation states trying to come to an agreement, but there is no like level above that, which is what Tianxia would be. And it sort of starts with the idea of politics nowadays is based on hostility on the other, on in-groups and out-groups, and you try to achieve what's best for your in-group, but like you don't really have to care about the out-group, which in the end is detrimental to everyone because different nation states just keep screwing each other over, basically. And so, because if we implement Tianxia, this sort of higher thing, by definition, there can't be an other, there can't be an enemy, there can't be a foreigner, because by definition, everyone is included in it, and that way we can sort of build things that are beneficial to everyone, and that, everyone lifts each other up. Where a condition for implementing a certain thing is that it not only benefits you, but also benefits the other parties involved. And it sort of looks at it from a few different angles, which I find very interesting. So yeah, I'm really liking this so far. I like philosophy. I know a little bit about philosophy, but I am very new to Chinese philosophy. Like, most of what I know is more Western philosophy. And so because of that, this is taking a little bit more work for me because, within Western philosophy, even if I'm learning about a different theory that I don't know anything about, I sort of know a bit about the tradition that it's part of. I have a general framework to place things into. Whereas with this one, I don't have that. I don't have that background. It's referencing to this or that philosophist that I don't know. So it's taken a bit more work to understand what he's saying. And sometimes there are a couple of sentences that I have to read a few times in order to understand what he's talking about. But his ideas aren't overly complicated in a lot of ways, and he repeats itself a lot, which for philosophy I don't mind because philosophy tends to be a bit more abstract and so is therefore a little bit harder to understand typically, and so I don't mind us sort of looking at the same idea in a few different contexts or presented in a few different ways. That way, if you didn't understand the first time, you still have like another time to get it. So yeah, I think it's very interesting. There are certain elements of it that I agree with wholeheartedly. There are some parts that he has yet to convince me of. There is one point, especially, where I think he made a bit of a leap. Near the end of the chapter, he's talking about universal values and what can be considered a universal value and how do we determine that. And earlier on in the introduction, he talks about the difference between individual rationality and relational rationality. And then when he talks about characteristics that a value needs to have in order to be considered a universal value, he talks about universal benefit, and he says the only way to ensure that that is the case is if we look at them through relational rationality rather than individual rationality. And I'm not convinced of that. I do think that with the lens of individual rationality, you could also determine that. So there, I think he made a bit of a leap, and I don't think that he's fully, I don't fully agree with him. But other than that, I don't actively disagree with him as of yet. But as I said, there are certain parts that I'm going to need a little bit more to like actively agree with him. But very interesting book. I'm really happy to read this. I think it's very interesting to have this voice that is critical of the Western ideas that international politics are often based on, because Western countries enforced them with violence, and I think that is very interesting to be like, yeah, but those aren't working currently. And so that he is taking an element from a different culture, Chinese culture, to see how that could work. I don't know that, well, as with all sort of theories for a better world, I don't think any one theory is fully the key, but I think that we definitely could look at a couple things and take from each of them what works, which is also kind of hard because sometimes in order for them to work, you also need other things. But in practice, it's hard, but I think that it is interesting to gather as many ideas from throughout history and all over the world to think about a possible ideal world. So yeah, it's very interesting. It is nice to sort of have this counterbalance for like the more Western philosophical ideas. So I'm really interested in this. I will definitely keep on reading and hopefully keep on talking about it. So yeah, that is my thoughts so far about All Under Heaven by Zhao Tingyang. Okay, I have an update on All Under Heaven. I have read till the end of part 1, which means I'm about halfway through the book, because part 2 and 3 are significantly shorter than part 1. Actually, I'm more than halfway because like the end is like footnotes and stuff. Like this is footnotes, so in reality I'm over halfway and it is still very interesting. The first part was mostly about the historical context that led to the invention of Tianxia, which was very interesting. This book is teaching me that I'm a lot more cynical than I thought I was. But basically this was about the Zhou dynasty, which was a smaller tribe that then sort of came into power over not all of what is now China, but a pretty big area and a lot of people. But since they themselves were pretty small, they didn't have like the military capabilities of, you know, keeping power. And so they had to come up with a different system to legitimize their rule and to make sure that the people that they're ruling wouldn't rise up against them. And so they created a system where people would voluntarily want to be part of it because being part of it is more beneficial to each and every one of the members than not being part of it. So I think that was very interesting, and just this, yeah, this very practical power type way of you know, inventing this, which was interesting. And then it talked about some like practical application in the past, where it had some very interesting things. Like there's one thing that really stuck with me and I thought was really nice. They talk about like the division of like military power, like how big of an army the sort of boss entity would have, and then like the different vassal entities. And then it says like, yeah, the state in charge should have more military power than each of the vassal states individually, so that it could still, you know, react in case it's needed, but it should not be so big that it should still be possible for a couple of vassal states to work together to overthrow the state in charge, in case the state in charge becomes corrupt or whatever. So I thought that was very interesting. This it is possible to overthrow them, like built into the system, but you're gonna need a couple different vassal states to work together in order to achieve that. So it also means that not one of them can just take power for themselves for selfish reasons. I thought that was really interesting. So yeah, it was a very interesting chapter. It also talked about the collapse of Tianxia and how that was because it could not realistically live up to the standards that it had set in the beginning. So you have to be careful that when you create a system like this, it is like durable in a sense that there are, like, for example, they talked about like distribution of land, but at a certain point they run out of land to distribute. So they couldn't keep doing that anymore. So just like those things that you have to think about when creating a system. It is interesting. I still think that it still feels a little repetitive a lot of the time, and I don't really think that it should be as long as it is. Personally, this book, just from a writing perspective. Also, I'm just not convinced that the ideal way as represented here could be implemented, because even the author acknowledges like, oh yeah, the historical implementation was limited in this way and still inherited this and this feature from before that doesn't really work with the idea of Tianxia. And I'm just thinking a lot of things mentioned, I don't think they could really work in practice. Maybe that's just me being cynical, as I already said. But I just don't think that it'll be possible in the way that he presents it. So he still has some work convincing me that and how this could actually be implemented in reality. But I do think it is interesting. So yeah, that is my update for All Under Heaven. And I'll talk to you when I have a little bit more. Well, hello. I have updates for you. First, I finished All Under Heaven by Zhao Tingyang. This, I feel a little bit mixed on this. So I went into this like knowing that the basic premise was looking at how the ancient idea of Tianxia could potentially work for the future and as a realistic way that it could work for the future. And that was what I wanted from this book. And the parts of it that actually were about that I thought were very, very interesting. But so much of this book was related to Chinese history, which, like, political history, which, like, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know enough to really follow those sections. It's not like, you know, the author assumes that you know a little bit about it to follow it, and so those were kind of hard for me and just not what I wanted from this book. Like, I definitely want to read another book on the history and the different dynasties that came and went and all that. But it's just, for me, with my former knowledge, the way it was done in this book just didn't really do anything, and it was kind of hard for me to really gather much from. Because at the end, it was like, yeah, the introduction was about sort of the system itself and characteristics and necessary conditions, and then like the very end, but everything in between was like basically looking at historical circumstances, which certain parts were interesting, like what I mentioned in the previous clip of like the way that the systems came to be, of like, you know, the Zhao dynasty needing something to entice people to let themselves be ruled by them, because they didn't have the military might to reinforce their power. Like, I do think that was interesting, but I think like a lot of that just wasn't really necessary for what I thought the book was about and what I wanted from the book. And so because of that, I am a little disappointed in it. The most interesting thing actually was the appendix. For me, it really, it talks about like ways that you could reform democracy in order to, you know, lose some of the trappings and negative you know, results that could come from it, with like demagoguery and stuff. And it talks about two possible solutions that I thought were very interesting. So it talks about having like a weighted democracy, where something has to be like both something has to be approved by both like popular vote and a panel of experts on the topic that it is about, which I thought was very interesting, because that way you sort of prevent demagogues using different information to make the people vote for something that is ultimately to their detriment. So I thought that was interesting. And then the second was like having 2 votes for every person, where you not only can vote for, oh yeah, I want this thing, you can also indicate, I really actively do not want this thing, which then can sort of even out when, you know, when there's 2 options and like one option is beneficial. Well, if like one option is actively detrimental to a certain group of the population, they can like vote that they actively don't want it, and then that sort of gets taken into account, which sort of helps vulnerable minorities to not be screwed over by the majority, which I thought that was interesting, and that is actually what I wanted from this book. But it was like, as I said, the appendix that is 7 pages long. So yeah, for that I'm a little bit disappointed with this book. I think that it is worth a read if what I described is what you want from the book, but go into it knowing that's what you're getting, and also go in knowing a little bit about Chinese history, because otherwise it'll be really, really hard to follow. So yeah, that is all under heaven. In between that, reading that, I needed, like, my brain needed something easier and lighter, so I read an entire other book in the meantime, which is Heartstopper Volume 4, and this was lovely. The fourth installment, of course, in the Heartstopper graphic novel series by Alice Oseman. And this was just very cute and delightful, like the other installments in this series. This one does deal with some heavier topics, primarily Charlie's eating disorder, but it doesn't focus on the effects of the eating disorder and the eating disorder itself, but more how can people in his community support him? How can how can they help him heal, even if they're not able to do it themselves? Because I did really appreciate that it also focused on Nick cannot just heal Charlie alone. Like, a romantic relationship is not enough to heal mental illness, which I did really appreciate, but just how can different types of relationships and different people in Charlie's life support him on top of, like, the professional help that he's getting, which I thought that was really, really beautiful. So yeah, I really loved this. It was very cute. It made me smile. One thing I don't love that, like, everyone in their friend group is, like, coupled up. I'm like, okay. Like, I get it. It's a YA book. It happens, but I'm like, sure. Because it does, like, it focuses primarily on Nick and Charlie, but also shows the other relationships a little bit. And so, like, I wish there was, like, at least one friend who wasn't in a relationship, you know? But yeah, this was fun. This was cute. I love this. I gave it 5 stars. But now I have only 1 volume left. I think there's going to be a 6th volume, but there's 5 out currently. So yeah, I don't want it to be over because I really like spacing these out a little bit for when I, need a little, just like fun, cutesy, heartwarming little story. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. And then the next book that I'm going to be reading, because I think I'm going to read 1 more book in this vlog. I really like vlogs of 3 books. I think that's a really nice amount. So I'm going to start I Want to Eat Your Pancreas by Yoru Sumino. The reason I'm picking this one for this vlog is because I read Heartstopper for TBRathon, which is hosted by Leandra from Leandra TBR0. I'll link her down below. And she is hosting this year-long reading challenge where, well, I'm doing the map of stories. There are a couple different aspects to it. I'm participating in the map of stories, which is this map with 12 locations, so 1 for each month. Every location is related to a particular genre and has 3 prompts. One of those prompts is a booktuber recommendation, which I'll make a separate vlog for that in March, of reading the January, February, March booktuber recommendation. So stay tuned for that. But the other 2 prompts I would like to do in this video. So I have Heartstopper for LGBTQ+ author, and I have I Want to Eat Your Pancreas for 2 people on the cover. So this isn't technically a romance. It's a it's more like a tragedy. It doesn't really have a happy ending, and so it doesn't really qualify as a romance, but it features a relationship, like a romantic, between 2 people, and so I think that it's close enough to count it. I'm sure Leandra won't mind. But so what is it about? We have two main characters, the one that you see here. It's from the boys' POV. The girl has this pancreatic disease that she's dying basically, and the boy discovers that, and they have a little romance, which then you can kind of guess how that romance is going to end. And I've heard that it's quite devastating. It's very sad, but I'm very, very interested. I believe this started out as a manga. I could be wrong. I know that there's a manga of it. I know there's an anime of it. But this is like the prose novel version of it. So yeah, I'm going to be reading this. And then I'll give you an update when I have one. Okay, not a reading update, but a life update. I made lasagna for the first time in my real life. So I have two because I'm only one person, and with the ingredients I had enough to make two. So I have one for in the fridge, another one is in the oven, and it's gonna be great. So yay, I'm really proud of myself. Okay, I made it a quarter of the way through. I want to eat your pancreas. I feel like I did a pretty bad job explaining what this book is about in the previous clip, so let's redo that now. So we are following a boy. I don't think we learn his name. I don't think his name has come up until this point. Anyway, he is at the hospital one day for reasons, and there he finds this book. He doesn't know what it is, so he starts reading it. It turns out to be a journal from our female main character, Sakura. And because of it, he learns that Sakura has a pancreatic disease and that she's dying. He didn't read very far. He read just enough to realize that it's a diary, like a journal. But it started with that. So he sort of found out her secret. She catches him with her journal. So she knows that he found out his secret, and they've sort of had this connection ever since. It's, like, they started doing stuff together. And unfortunately, I'm not loving this. I was really excited for this. I really, really wanted to like it. I know that a lot of people do. But Sakura is really getting on my nerves. She has a pretty big personality, and I don't like her. She likes to... It's kind of like pranks, but that I think are in pretty poor taste. Like, for example, at one point, she goes to the store to buy some rope and ask the employee advice on what the best rope would be to hang herself, just for laughs. And I just find that in very poor taste. And she does things like that a couple times throughout the book so far, and I really don't like it. I don't find it funny. Like, she lost a lot of sympathy through that, like, pretty much straight away for me, and I just can't with her anymore. I really, really dislike her. So I think I'm gonna do enough of this. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I really thought I was gonna love this. I was so excited for this. But no, unfortunately, I can't really get into it in the way that I would want. So that's the end of the vlog. But to make it end with not a complete dud, I have a library haul for you. So at least there's hope that I have another book soon that I do love. So, first I picked up 2 books that I have for book club, like 2 different book clubs. The first one is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sango Mandana. This is for a book club I have with some offline friends. Or I was actually supposed to start this on Monday. But so this will be the next book that I read. Yeah, I'm excited. I've heard good things. I think it'll be very cute and fun and light, which is always nice. Then I have A Great Deliverance by Elizabeth George, the first book in the Thomas Linley series. This is for the Evil Minds Research Group, which is a book club on Discord where we read mystery books, and this is the January pick. I'm not sure what it's about, but we'll find out. I'm pretty excited. I know it's a police procedural, which I wanted for February because I was kind of in a mood for it. So yeah, I'm gonna be reading this. Then I also got a poetry collection, which is Habitus by Ratna Fabius, which is a poet. She grew up in Curacao, currently lives in the Netherlands, and she wrote this poetry collection, and I've read 1 or 2 poems from this before, and I really, really liked them, so I'm excited to read the entire collection. Also, it's kind of fun because, like, the cover is like, these circles are like clear, and then you just have like the black paper beneath it, which is really fun. I do like the cover. So I've got this. I also got a middle grade, which is Der Magische Pakt by Tanja Vossen. This is on my TBR for my TBR game for this month, so I would like to read it. It's also on my 26 books reading 2026, so I definitely hope to get to it. I'm actually, honestly, if I'm not able to get to this in February, I'm not mad about it, because for TBRathon, March is, I don't know what the place on the map is called, but it's the middle grade place. So yeah, I could always read it for that if I don't get to it in February, so it's fine. But yeah, I'll try to get to it in February. It's the first book in a series about this magical candy makers who have to break a curse. So it sounds a lot of fun. And then finally, this is a book that I already got for March. Cleopatra by Natasha Solomons. It's a biofiction of Cleopatra, obviously. I plan to read this in March, as I already said. I'm pretty excited for it. But yeah, I could only read a finite number of books in one single month, so this won't be able to fit into February, and that's fine. But so yeah, that is my little library haul. And that was the video. So I would now hold up the books I read, but I already returned All Under Heaven and Heartstopper to the library. So I read All Under Heaven by Zhao Tingyang, which I liked elements of, but it wasn't fully what I wanted from it, but I still do recommend it if you find it interesting. Then I read Heartstopper Volume 4 by Oseman, which was just fun and cute and delightful, and even the more difficult topics that were tackled in this particular volume were still handled in a way that it didn't lose that lightness and heartwarming quality. And then I read I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, or at least I read part of this because I DNF'd it about a quarter of the way through because I just didn't like the main character at all. But so yeah, that was my week. I'm actually glad that I did this. This year I've been kind of focusing or trying to focus on the more themed reading vlogs. I say that if like we're really far throughout the year and I've already posted plenty. I've posted one, but sort of that has been my plan mostly. But I really like that I can also just do just this like random week-long reading vlog again because I kind of missed that too. So yeah, I had fun. I hope you had fun too. Let me know what you were up to in the past week, if you've read some good books. And I hope to see you again in the video. Bye!